So, hi. Today, Jessica and I, we're really happy to welcome Rafael dos Santos.
Correct, thank you.
Rafael was born in Brazil and came over to this country at the age of 21 and went through a series of challenges and adventures, which I'm sure we'll look forward to hearing all about. But you've ended up as something of a migrant entrepreneur champion. And we're really interested to hear what you've got to say about leadership and your learnings along the way.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I moved to the UK when I was 21. It was quite a while ago now, almost half of my life, and not quite. 17 years ago. I moved here because I needed to learn English. I thought I leave my job at Microsoft in Brazil, and then I move here, learn English, go back. But obviously you never know once you're going to a new journey what is going to happen. So within the first 3 months, I actually met my first boyfriend, and then I wanted to stay a little bit longer and stay a little bit longer. And then 3 months became 6 and became 9 and it became 2 years. And then now it's been 17 years. I'm married now, not to my first boyfriend, but I came to learn the language, but ended up staying because of love. That's reality.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice story.
Yes. So along the way, as I mentioned, so I used to work for Microsoft, being a support analyst for mainly Americans and other South Americans that went to Brazil to work. So we provided support. I thought I could speak English when I left Brazil until I moved to the UK. We had a joke, my sister and I, when we moved. It sounded as if everyone had a hot potato in their mouth because we couldn't understand them. So it was like... And then after about 9 months, we said, my God, they swallowed the potato. Because now there is no... So now we understand. And now I'd like to think that we speak as they speak. So we had this joke of the hot potato. So it's, leaving Brazil and a nice job and moving here. Reality was very different. When you move as a migrant, a lot of the migrants' certifications are not valid. If you don't speak the language, the chances of you getting a good job are zero, and which was mine. I thought I worked for Microsoft there. I could work for Microsoft here, and so it was not reality. So reality was that I ended up washing dishes for about a month in a restaurant in Notting Hill. My 21st birthday, it's a very sad story. I spent 12 hours behind a kitchen a sink washing dishes as a trial to see if I was good enough to get the job. So I left the job and I went home and I sat under a tree and I must have cried for about 3 hours thinking, what the hell am I allowed to say? What the hell? Okay. I'm doing here. I left, which was a kind of mid-class kind of lifestyle, to do that. But then, that's how life is. And I think everyone takes or do with their lives what they really want. 2 years later, I was celebrating in the bar with 50 people. I closed the whole floor in the bar. So, while my first one was lonely under a tree crying and was January, so imagine how cold it was, I didn't think that would be the end for me. So I was like, okay, this is part of the journey. This is how, it's, in a way, it helps you to grow, to become more mature, to see that, life is not as easy as you think, and pushes you to do things. And that's what happened to me.
Did you know that you had an entrepreneurial streak before you came to England, or was it something that you developed because you wanted to push yourself and grow while you were here?
Yeah, I always get asked this question. I don't know if you saw a report that was launched by the Center for Entrepreneur in 2016 that says migrants are twice as likely to launch their own business than not just Brits, but any native. The reality is that it's not because we are more entrepreneurial. It's because we don't get to the same opportunities, right? So anyone who is born in the UK goes to school, goes to uni, and then most probably you get a job or you do an internship and you get a good job as soon as you... when I say a good job, like even for me at the time, working in Selfridges or John Lewis is a good job compared to washing dishes or doing cleaning. So it's not, I don't think I was I had the entrepreneurial spirit. And the reality was I was very tired of just taking the bus. I had no money to take the tube. I was eating tuna sandwiches for about 6 months. For about 2 years, I couldn't smell tuna. Seriously. So it's not that I was an entrepreneur or had that in me. It was because no one would give me a job. I must have sent about 1,000 CVs. It was that, yeah. So it's the reality of migration, I think. Unless you go with a job and with a company and apartment is sorted, and when you're young and you're going on an adventure, reality is very different. I met wonderful people that helped me, but I said, I want this to happen, or I want a job. I remember in a bar, I became friends with the HR manager of Debenhams at the time, and I had no idea. It was in a gay bar. We would start talking, and I said, "Oh, what you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, this is what I'm doing." I said, "Oh, I'm looking for a job." He said, "I can help you by redoing your CV." And it was amazing, to get the HR. Now, looking back, I had no idea what Debenham was at the time. I didn't realize how big it was. And then I said, "Yeah, sure, let's have a coffee." And I didn't even have money to pay for a coffee. It was so bad. But he was, it was great. So I'm very grateful that I met wonderful people that helped me. But one thing that I always made sure is that I knew what I wanted. Like, I wanted this to happen, and then I looked for help. I was never... I had no problem asking for people. The only thing they could say is no. I learned once in a course that no, you always have. You already have no, right? Until you ask, and then be able to get. So.
Yeah, it's so important, because I think so many people are afraid to ask for help, or they see that as a weakness.
Yes.
And actually, it's true. You just never know.
Yes.
Until you ask.
Yes. So it was like when. Recently I launched a magazine, a high profile, and we were wondering who should we put on the cover of the first one, because it was high profile. When we were doing brainstorming with the team, and I said, who is the highest profile person in the country that we could put in the cover? And I said, the Queen. And then they all looked, said, but you can't put in the Queen in the cover. I said, who said we cannot? The Queen is in several magazines. So a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails, and then I got the Queen on the cover. So who can say no to you, right? Yeah. So if you know where to go and ask for help and know people, you can get.
So you're helping other entrepreneurs now, aren't you? Specifically migrant ones.
No, now, so one thing that I, for many years, I was helping just migrant entrepreneurs. I also have to look in a business sense. As much as I have, this charitable side of me that I want to help other migrants, I also need to look at business. So the migrant community is small compared to the British community, obviously. Only 14% of businesses in the UK. I wouldn't say only, because it's quite a large amount if you think of the whole country. But then, commercially speaking, it's not feasible just to work with a very small proportion of the market. So my pitch before was all about celebrating diversity. So now what I do is, as well as celebrating diversity, I promote integration. So I want now more British entrepreneurs to join my club, high profile club. So the migrants that are already there can grow their business too. And you only get integrated if you get to know people from the country. So that's why I married a Brit, and that's why I always tell my members now, make sure that you integrate and make sure that you understand the culture, because we are in your country. So I think we should be taking the initiative. We have to learn the language. We have to understand the culture. And I think the opportunities that I was given, I think migrants have to contribute to the society where they're in, because they're giving opportunities.
What are you learning about leadership? I mean, you're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, and you look at the tech world, just the tech world. Yeah. I mean, there's startups.
Yes, most startups
popping up everywhere.
Yes.
What are the skills that you see that are contributing to success, and perhaps what are the traits that are pulling people back?
I think most businesses that are becoming really successful are businesses that are around a community, and I think that's why, I had a very successful business for 12 years. I had a state agency providing accommodation for people that just arrived in London because I understood the problem, and then I was solving a problem that I understood really well. Now I run a membership club that helps people to get in the media so they can grow their business. Because I run a business, I know how the media helped me to raise my profile and bring the opportunities. My business is doing well because I'm growing a community. It's not just about providing a service. It's not just about, obviously making money with that. But there is much more to it where, like, for example, we have a WhatsApp group for the community. 5 days that I was on holiday and I didn't check the WhatsApp, we had 980 messages. So it's busy. But what happens then as well is the community helps each other. So as a leader, it's not about just you providing the information, you giving and you helping. You then become an enabler for other people to help each other. And I think that's why, for example, that's why Airbnb is so powerful. Because even though it's connecting people, now it's running events all over the world. It's bringing people together. Most businesses that are really successful, they understand that the community is the heart of the business. So how can we help with the community? Obviously, whatever service you're providing, whatever amount people are paying, people will be very happy to pay if they see the value that their community will bring to them. And some people in my community, they join because they just arrived in the country, they don't know anyone. Some people want to be featured in the media. Some people want to make friends. So, they may have different reasons why they want to join. Obviously, we have the benefits, but the benefits is just one thing that we say, look, this is what we offer. What you make of it, the benefits that you want for yourself, then is down to you. But one of the things that I want also to say is it has to be very genuine. If you start because this is my nature. I love parties. I like getting people together. I'm Brazilian. I like feathers. Do you know what I mean? So it is in me to have that. I love birthday parties, and so for me, the development of the business and doing all these events that I do is just not, for me, it's not work. It's fun, and I could do every day. I don't know if my husband would like that, but I could run an event every day if bringing people together, and it's very genuine. And I think anyone who wants to run a business and is not maybe a people's person or doesn't like that thing and tries to do, is not going to be genuine. It's not going to work. So it's important to understand, what is it that you enjoy, that if you do, it doesn't feel like, because for me, it doesn't feel like work. And I think I'm in a very lucky position that I could be doing this 24 hours a day, and I wouldn't get tired, and I could keep going.
And what are the so I think there's lots of people that try to build communities and they're not always successful. And do you think it's just you being able to communicate who you are and the essence, like you're saying, that authenticity to them, and then sharing those values, and therefore they then go and interact with each other?
Yes, I think there are two things there. So I just completed an MBA from Henley Business School. And one of the things that I learned during our marketing module is that people buy for two reasons. And that there are only two reasons. They either seek pleasure or they avoid pain, right? There is no other reason. So if you have a community and if you have a service, because as a business, obviously you want to build a community because you're selling something. But what you're selling, is it strong enough for people to feel, I need this because it provides me pleasure? So let's say Louis Vuitton, right? So Gucci and all these luxurious brands, they give you the idea of power, success, because it's expensive. That means you must be doing well. So, is that instant pleasure, the gratification that you have? While other business, you want to avoid pain. So you buy insurance because you want to avoid the headache. You have to buy. right? So you end up paying. Like an account, I always make a joke. I love you, my accountant. But accountants, you pay because you want to avoid the paying. Most people that I know hate doing bookkeeping or, going through the accounts. So you pay people to do that. So you are avoiding paying. It's something that you have to do. This business is slightly more difficult to sell because you're avoiding paying, right? So it's not that I'm in a lucky position, it's because I love being featured in the media. I love giving interviews. So I developed a business based on what I love. And I know the pleasure that gives me. Now, when we get a member featured in the media, I get the same pleasure. And I can see their happiness and. So what I sell is people really seeking pleasure. They see themselves as an expert in the media. So that's why my community is growing very fast, because I really understand what they want and they need. There is obviously a value there and it's priced right. So that's why communities will thrive or not. So you really need to understand where you're going, if you are avoiding pain or if you're seeking pleasure. And you must love building a community. It takes time, but you have to try.
Yeah. So you said your mission for your members is to make them visible, credible and influential. And can you link those kind of words and what they mean to you to kind of a vision of leadership?
Sure. So I think another thing that, for businesses, if they want to become the leaders in their field, is if they have a cause, right? For example, I have a cause. I want to help a migrant who moved to this country and, like me, probably washing dishes or, delivering pizza, but they have skills, right? So they could be doing a business based on the skills that they had in their country instead of doing cleaning or delivering pizza. So my cause is to help people improve their lives through entrepreneurship for migrants. But I have a business, obviously, that helps them to do that. So when I say more visible, more credible, more influential, I'll give an example. So I wanted to show the media in the UK that migrant entrepreneurs, they give much more than they take, because we have a lot of negative media about migrants because it's very blurred. The word migrant, I always compared with the word gay in the 80s. Gay was, if you say nobody wants to be called gay, everyone was in the closet, and because the word gay was very negative. It was all about HIV and promiscuous sex and all that used to come with the word gay. It took about 30 years to change, and gay people today can, like me, they can get married and, they can have, I was going to say they can have dogs. No, they have kids. They can have dogs anyway. But I don't have kids, but at least we can have a normal life, right? And like I can give an interview and don't feel afraid to say I'm married to a man. Now, with the word migrant, it's very blurred the way that it's used. The word migrant can be, especially the media says, people think the migrants are uneducated, poor, and they come on the back of a lorry to get into the country, which is not the case. So visible, credible, influential means, I'll give an example. So I launched a report in the House of Parliament. So I made not just myself visible, but I made migrant entrepreneurs visible, because then it got featured in The Guardian and all that. It became more credible because now we talk about migrant entrepreneurs as a more positive thing. And with influence, having a report in the House of Parliament, now I can talk to MPs, and there are many things that I can do, not just for myself, but for a whole community. That's why it's important to understand, this whole thing about becoming more visible, credible, and influential. And the media helps a lot with that.
So we've been exploring gender and inclusion in organizations. And I think our experience is for a lot of CEOs, it's something they just rather not engage with. It's an uncomfortable subject. So I'm wondering, what are the things that you think can help them engage? Because the research would say that the more inclusive you are, actually the more successful you're going to be. So, we're exploring what is it that's holding people back, leaders back from that. And you know, I think we've got our theories on that, but I'm interested in what you think can help leaders turn around to be just more inclusive.
I think there are different, like I went to a talk the other day, and it was the UK country manager, it was the country manager for LinkedIn. And he was explaining, he's gay, and he was explaining how long it took for them to have a 50-50 workforce, men and women. It took them 4 years when he became the UK country manager. And one of the things he wanted is to have a more diverse workforce. And what they did is every time they were finalists for a job, there would be a man and a woman. So they would be, very equal in a sense. But it still took them 4 years to get on a 50-50 balance. And we're not even talking about, so now we have 50, men and women, and then we have blacks, and then we have Asians, and then we have LGBT, and, how do you add all that diversity? I think what is happening now is there are several recruitment companies that they're focusing, and they realize that if they focus on certain types of groups, they might be able to help the companies to become more diverse. I'll give an example. So My G Work is a company that I mentor. They're twins, they're gay, and they is LGBT recruitment. So that means that let's say if you have a law firm or if you're LinkedIn and you want to hire LGBT people, you can't put it there on an advert, right? So you can't say we're looking for women or we're looking for black people, you can't. So how do you know in an interview you can say, so are you gay? You can't ask that either. So how do companies have a challenge. So what they do now is, so they have this website, so go to My G Work, and you know that if you put an advert there, you know that all the applicants will be gay. So then there are lots of recruitment companies that are now, for BAME, which is Black and Asian minority, LGBT, Women Like Us is another website, for women that are going back to employment. So there is a way, but I think companies have to think differently. Obviously, if you have a board only with men, and if they're white over 50, they probably don't know My G Work, and they don't know Women Like Us. So it will be very hard for them to get. So there must be, in the board, there must be others. Or within the company, speak to people that maybe not in management, but they will have this knowledge, because it's most likely they will have gay friends, they'll have black friends, and then ask where. I think there's a little bit of research that needs to be done. And top management, I think, has to kind of mingle a little bit more with the general members of staff to understand probably where they would find if they really want to add diversity. Because just like LinkedIn did, it took them 4 years, but they got there. But it was part of their KPIs. They wanted that change to happen. And I think if top management really wanted that change to happen, they'll find a way.
It's about helping them want it.
Yes. I think it's more about wanting, because when we put our minds into it, as I just said earlier, there is no way you can't find it. If you really want that to happen, and if you have the resources, you will find. You find websites, you find consultants. There are many different ways that you can find people. You can add diversity to your business.
This may be contentious, I don't know, but all those white men over 50. Do you think?
Are you over 50?
Do you think that? I don't regard myself. Yes, I am, but I don't regard myself as typical. Have we got just to wait till they've retired and got out of the way? I mean, you say LinkedIn took 4 years. That's incredibly fast. By societal standards, that's unbelievably fast. I mean, they're predicting equal numbers in senior management in this country, sort of 2060 or something. So is this just about waiting for people who don't have the open mind that you're talking about, the people who want to bring about change?
Yeah, because the I can't remember his name, which is really bad, but he looks very young. I think, I don't think he's even 40. So, the country manager for LinkedIn. I do think there is a need there for those who are in management to go, because I know they have a lot of experience, but obviously they don't have probably the diversity within the groups. I'm sorry to say, but the straight world normally is very different from the gay world, because we mingle much more. Like if you go to a gay club, you have a group of 10 gay men, let's say, and you're going to have a CEO, you're going to have a cleaner, you're going to have a manager, you're going to have a supervisor, and then you're going to have a black, an Asian, and they're all talking, and it doesn't matter what they do. And now in the straight world, you go to Oxford, you mingle with people from Oxford, you probably marry someone from Oxford and all your friends from Oxford, and rarely you're going to have people that are outside of that circle. So it's very different.
It's based on survival, though, isn't it? I mean, fundamentally, you gather with people. There was at some elemental level there was a need to survive, and you talk about the gay community. It's beautiful in the way you describe it, but I get the sense that there was this at some level a need to survive, which brings people together, and they don't care. They're not worried about where the person comes from. It's just that there's a sense of identity, which
I understand the sense of identity, but I think the problem with that is there is no diversity. While yes, we go, obviously when you go to a gay club and then you have all ages and you have all types of jobs and then people talk and while if you go to a straight club, it's normally people around the same age and then they're doing the same thing, and it's much more unlikely that, for example, a married couple will have a friend who's single. It just doesn't happen very often. I don't want in any way to generalize or patronize, but it is most of the time, or the majority is always like that. So what happens then is I'm on board level, C level, and I'm over 50 and I've worked with you for 10 years in the past, and your brother who is very similar. So there is a vacancy, there is word of mouth, there is a CV, and then you got the job. So, and then what happens is it stays within the same powers. So, do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. For that to happen so we really need to hire people from outside. So we must then put that out there, and we must put with women like us, and we must put with My G Work, and we must talk to others, which unfortunately doesn't happen, especially depending on the type of industry. If you're talking about oil and gas, if you talk about engineering, if you talk about tech, it's mostly men. Obviously, there is a disproportionate number of men that decide to go into STEM. I know there's a big thing about women now, going to STEM and getting those jobs. But there are industry, unfortunately, because of the way society is, there is a huge number of men going to certain industries, while there's a certain number of, like for example, PR and marketing. You are the woman or a gay man. It's like, in PR, I know. I don't think I've ever met a straight man in PR, right? So I'm sure they are out there, but but I never met one. But there are, like, while if you go to engineering, in a company with 1,000 engineers, how many are going to be women? If we talk about 100, 10%, if that, is it reality? So, there is a lot there, that as much as companies want to change sometimes, you don't have the number of professionals. And when it comes to businesses, you have to hire the right person. You can't hire just looking for a woman if there are 100 men applying for an engineering job and there is only one woman applying and she's not the right person. The company cannot hire her just to have the numbers. Do you see what I mean? So there is as a business owner, I know the difficulty as well.
It's funny because at the moment we're doing quite a lot of research around oil and gas and STEM, and it's fascinating because from what I'm learning, the number of women coming in at the bottom it's a very healthy number.
Okay.
Actually, But when they've been there a year, they look up in this organization and all they can see is men, particularly at the top level. And if there is a woman on the executive team, it's not an operational post that she's holding. It might be HR, it might be chief counsel. But they look up, and then on top of that, they look at the hours that these guys work, and they say, "This is silly.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that."
Want family, they want to look after the kids.
I think that there's a sense that it's so masculine at the top, and it's not a healthy masculine. It's an unhealthy masculine, which is driven by competition, and it's driven by winning over somebody else losing. All these sort of concepts, which I think for a lot of women, if they're true to themselves, look at that and say, I don't want that. I don't want to work like that. I want to express I've learned engineering. I love engineering, but I want to be in a place where I can be myself as well, kind of thing. I'm speaking for women. It's a very dangerous thing to do.
It is a very dangerous thing to do. I don't know. I'm trying to kind of feel what's emerging for me, I guess, as you speak around kind of your experience of coming to a country and being very much outside of your comfort zone and having people that help you and having that need and determination to create a business yourself, not necessarily because you wanted to, but because you had to. And the people that helped you along the way. And I suppose, is it the same thing? And you were talking about there are all these migrants that have all these skills, but they don't have the opportunities. And I think that feels similar in diversity as a whole, that there are people with lots of skills and that maybe that they aren't given the opportunities to fulfill their potential. And I suppose the real thing is, as leaders, as organizations, what procedures can you put in place to really provide more opportunities to reach more people and help more people fulfill their potential in the same way that you were able to do on your journey, that
Sure.
You had people supporting you and opportunities, but you had an internal drive as well. And it's that kind of when those things come together, because you can have an internal drive, but then maybe no one's there to help you or support you or give you an opportunity, or you could have all the opportunities you wanted, but no internal drive because you don't know what your purpose is or you don't know what your skills are. And so it's when those two things come together that people are really able to flourish. And it seems that you're very good at sort of seeing how that works together and making that a very strong part
But
of the business.
I think 80% it comes from you. I always, like when I've done research and I've talked to people, and 80% of the barriers are in people's minds, right? So I have an accent, but that never stopped me from talking, from doing public speaking. I gave a TED talk. It was never for me an issue. While I talked to other migrants and but I don't speak English well. Well, if you don't speak English well, go to an English class. Do you know what I mean? So there are so many barriers that put people in their minds. Just like you mentioned women who don't want to get to the top, because I don't want to. It is a barrier that you're putting for yourself. Oh, I don't want to work those hours. Well, therefore you don't get the job. Unfortunately, if the job that you want, you need to work 6 hours a week, you are not prepared. You're putting a barrier there. So there is only so much the company can do. And the same with migrants is exactly the same. You have an accent, lack of vocabulary. People will laugh at me because of the way that I speak, or because of, like, for example, I had issues recording videos. I would never record a video because I thought I sounded too gay. Nobody would listen to me. And it was only one day when I had a coaching to be able to help me to get over that fear. And I did. And then now I think, if you don't like my voice, if you think I'm too gay, stop the video. If you don't like what I'm saying, stop the video, right? Stop this. Stop listening to me, because I'm not going to stop talking. So barriers are, for people to achieve what they want, 80% needs to come from them. Then I agree. 20% is maybe, it's not the right environment, or maybe you don't have the right skills. And so there is a lot there. But if you have the drive, and if you want something to happen, and if you start asking people and telling people, and you start doing Facebook Lives and asking, I need help, people will help. The same way that people come to me and I help them, and the same way that I went to people and I asked for help, and people helped me. So I think people need to get over their barriers and their fears, then they will be able to achieve more.
Choice. The thing that really struck me there in what you're saying is there's
I'm drinking from his mug. I don't know if you have it on the camera. I have to say that I love. Look, if you can do a zoom on the
You're cruel.
amazing branding. I have to say this is cool. Cheers.
Oh, dear.
Cheers.
I was seriously embarrassed. Anyway, there we are. So, what I really heard there was you inferring that if you want to get on, you've got to conform in an organization. Like, if you don't want to work those hours, then you're not going to get the job, and so on. And I think that as I look at business today, and I project forward, it seems to me that the way that organizations are run today is not going to be the way that successful organizations are run in the future. I think we're in a very fast changing environment. Bloody mug. And I think that because, I mean, the sort of standard things, because there's so much data, because there's so much rush, because there's so much information, you have to make decisions so fast. I think a lot of people are overwhelmed, right, by the way that they work, which just makes them sick, essentially. So the reason that we set up Serenity in Leadership in the first place was to help leaders of the future develop the skills that they need in the future. And I think these are going to be places where people at the top of organization see that women are coming in and then leaving because the way that they're running the organization actually doesn't fit for the way that people want to live in the future. I feel there's that sort of, and maybe it's a pragmatic conforming because that's how you've had to be successful. You can't just make people change in order to suit the way that you want to be. But at the same time, I wonder what you're going to be doing in 5 or 10 years and how you're going to be leading then.
Sure. Well, I think that is, you must conform to certain rules and to certain, like, for example, do you want to be successful in the UK? You must speak English. So you have to conform, right? So you move to Germany. If you don't speak German, you're not going to be successful. So it's as easy as that. So I think that there are certain things that you must conform, right? You must understand the British rules. If you're running a business, you must understand, why the financial year starts on the 6th of April. There are certain things that you must understand and conform the rules. Now, there are certain things that may be right. I think if the culture of the organization, maybe it is too masculine, it is too, competition is very fierce. Therefore, women or any other, let's not just say women, but, maybe migrants or BAME or the LGBT community don't want to go to that top because they fear or because they think, well, I don't want to go. I don't have to have that lifestyle.
And also because it's actually a lot more difficult for them to get up there, even if they did want to conform.
Sure.
Because there's a pressure coming down on them that says, you don't look like me. I'm not happy with you coming up and standing by me or taking over from me.
Sure. So I think what we need to agree on here is that it is really top management that has to change, and because they need to become role models for those who are at the bottom, who are starting, the assistants, and so they can see themselves in a few years at the top. At the moment, most organizations, there isn't that diversity in their role model. But there are many companies that, Google is doing that, Facebook is doing that. So it's great to see the big tech giants. They are being the role models of business to show that it can be done, just like LinkedIn did. It was fantastic to hear that it took them 4 years in the UK to get to that stage, but they did. So if they can do it, then other companies can do that too. It's slightly more difficult for small businesses because they don't have the same resources, I would say, right? So especially micro businesses, I would say up to 10, 15 employees, is a lot of, I have a CV, I have a friend looking, there's a lot that happens like that. But I think when it gets to a point that it is a serious organization, and you have the C-level people, then I think that's when they must see that as part of the culture. So we must have a culture of diversity. We must have women and blacks and gays, whatever words we want to use, that it is diversity that must be at the top. So we can be role models for them. So when one of them leaves, we know that they can go up the ladder in terms of career. But it starts from the top. I agree with you, and it is harder at the moment because of everything we discussed.
And and the inclusion is not for its own sake. It's because that way you do actually get the best person in the position wherever in the organization. And it's that openness of mind, openness of thinking that I think is going to be a real facet of leadership in the future.
But thanks to Brexit, the UK is going to be behind many countries now, because it will be way harder for people to be hired in this country. Even for EU, that has a lot of talent, for you to bring them here. So the UK will suffer. I think it will suffer immensely by, it's not that British people don't have the skills, but there are certain skills that are way better from other countries. Now, India is very well known for their engineers, for the developers. A lot of Eastern European countries are known for their developers. While the UK, I think the main exporter from the UK is actually intellectual property, services. The UK doesn't produce anything. But if you don't have then the knowledge to produce that, how are you going to export? How are you going to be? So how are you going to compete?
You're knocking on an open door there.
But as a PR person, how would you go about a campaign to really show British people that we should be celebrating diversity? That we've talked a lot about the importance of diversity, but why is it so important? What do we actually gain by having, I always equate it to nature. So if we have monoculture, we destroy the land, we take out all the nutrients, and then we can't use the land anymore.
Sure.
Whereas if we have biodiversity, then we are able to put nutrients back into the land, so it's sustainable long term. And I see it in the same way that if we're all the same, we can't create anything meaningful or valuable. So
I'll ask you a question then. So have you had any meals out in the past week? Have you been to a restaurant?
Yes.
And what did you eat?
I had a lovely Italian.
You had a lovely Italian. Okay, so let's say with Brexit, all the Italian restaurants are going to close.
I would be heartbroken.
Exactly. So that's just one example,
Yeah.
right? So I was out with my husband last night. We went to a Turkish restaurant and we had, fantastic barbecued chicken, whatever. And we even discussed that. We said, imagine if immigration was illegal in every single country and we're all going to be eating the same food in every single restaurant that we went. How boring that would be, right? In London, especially, that you can go to a different restaurant every day of the year for about a year and a half, apparently, and you would be eating different. But things, we have Greeks and we have Portuguese and we have Brazilian. Now, I think it's one example, everyone who voted for Brexit, go and eat in English restaurant every night. Because, if you really don't want the whole migration, if you don't want migrants in the country, why are you going to migrant restaurant? Why are you eating their food? I think it's the number one example that I can give.
But if we take it kind of out of a more general society and put it into an organisation, and so it's not just perhaps nationality, but it's, for me, diversity is really about everyone having a unique set of experiences. Sure. And everybody having a unique talent and skill to offer as a part of the puzzle.
Sure.
And so it might not be obvious that you have a diverse group of people sometimes if you don't take the time to find out what their skill is, or what their talent or what their passion is, or what experiences they've had that they can then offer some insight to solving a problem. So how would you convince more organisations of the value of having a diverse workforce, intergenerational, cultural? It's there's so many different things. I think intergenerational is another thing that I hear a lot about now. How can we bring generations together? If you want top management to change and they are of a certain generation, how can you enable them to be comfortable speaking to younger, like you said, you've got when you're social in your kind of gay communities, and you've got the CEO and the cleaner and everything, like what is it that makes them comfortable and open enough to speak together on an equal level that we can't seem to foster in a lot of organizations?
Yeah, I think is one thing that Tom mentioned is having a common ground. So obviously, if you are in a gay bar or in a gay club, that everyone is gay. So, and then the conversation starts probably, what's your name, where are you from? And then so, but we all know that we are the same there. Now, when it comes to, so let's say, a creative company, right? So if you have everyone from the same country, they were educated all in the same way, how are you going to have different ideas? How are you going to have, so let's say a company like IKEA, that I'm sure to have all those different products, not everyone is from Sweden. I don't believe that the whole country would be so creative and think of exactly in the same way or think differently to have all those different products, right? So I think it is the best example of how can a company flourish. I'm sure they have lots of Italians, because Italians known for furniture. When it comes to when I see things that are very colorful, I always think that the designer must be South American. That's the first thing that comes to mind, because especially Brazil, you have the colors, you have the glitter of carnival, you have the feathers, and so having that way, because everyone will be influenced the way that they think by how they were brought up, right? So for me, it's a lot of dance, it's a lot of feathers and because of carnival. So everything that I think when it comes to creating an event, how can this event be fun, and how can this, while, like for example, I'll give an example of my wedding. My husband is English and I'm Brazilian. He's very English. So we had a very traditional, in a way, English wedding at the beginning, where we had the reception and we had the canapes and we had the speeches, but then in the evening it becomes a Brazilian carnival club party. So is the infusion there, and I think that's is the understanding that whatever subject people need to think of, if they are from a different culture, that culture will influence the way that they will solve a problem. And that's how companies, I think, become much more successful. Because if everyone thinks the same way, we're educated in the same way, they're probably going to think of the same way to solve the problem. So it doesn't add a lot of diversity there.
Yeah, so we need diversity for creative thinking and better problem solving. But the other thing that you said that I think is super important is having a common ground.
Yes.
So I suppose what forms common ground in organizations? Is it values? Is it shared vision? Is it kind of...
Yeah, and I think that comes from top management. So, the leadership. So the leader, if no matter how big the company is or how big or small the company is, if there is a leader there to drive the company, for the company to say, okay, so we're going to win awards, we're going to do this, and we're going to double profit. If part of that culture is we will have a very diverse, and diversity means we're going to have 25% BAME, 25% LGBT, 25% women, and then 25%. And then obviously there is because women could be LGBT or women could be migrant. So there is a lot there that can then be mixed. But it has to come from leadership. It has to come from the leader of the company to make that decision that this is how the company is going to be run and this is how our team is going to look like. So it is definitely, I think, comes from management. And it can come from one person. If that person has a strong voice in the company, they will make that change.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end, I think. But I think one thing that I heard is important to you is this the Migrant Business Show. So
yes.
Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I've run the Migrant Business Show before, so 4 times before. So we're coming this year bigger and better. So the Migrant Business Show, the idea is to celebrate diversity and to promote integration. So we promote integration between Brits and migrant entrepreneurs. So the website's migrantbusinessshow.com. And it's funny because a lot of Brits are saying, can we exhibit? I said, of course you can exhibit. So we want that diversity there. And we, in the past, every time we did the show, we had 1,000 people that came to the show. So this time we want about 2,000 people coming. So it's an amazing opportunity for people to exhibit, but also for people to attend. It's free to attend so they can see what migrants are doing. And the idea is to celebrate that, migrants are here to give much more than they take. They're creating jobs, they're doing businesses, and we want to showcase what migrant entrepreneurs are doing in the UK.
And this is in London.
Yes. So the website has all the information. We are doing in London. We plan to do in other cities next year, but this year it will be in central London. And there is also an award ceremony in the evening, which will be the first one in the UK to be done, called the Migrant Entrepreneur of the Year Awards, which will be in the House of Parliament.
Great.
Well done, you.
Thank you.
Yes. You said next year in other cities, because of course the percentage of people who live in London who think Brexit is crazy is very high. How do you think you would be received there?
Well, so last year when we started the club, so we're doing London and now we're doing Leeds, okay, and it's growing now in Leeds. And this year I want to launch in Manchester, so we are now negotiating to start doing our events. And I can see that when people attend, is now obviously outside of London, the percentage of a British entrepreneur is much higher. Okay, so while in London is now about 65% migrant, 35% British, outside of London is the other way around. It's about 80% Brits and then 20% migrant. But what I want is to make sure that it kind of gets to a balance where we say, look, there are other cities in the UK apart from London that are very diverse, and they're embracing diversity in such a cool way that they're welcoming migrant entrepreneurs too. So probably Manchester will be the city that we're going to be doing next.
So you're quite an ambassador in that sense.
I would like to think so, yes. And it is because I think it's, I think we need a voice, and, I didn't have a role model. I didn't have a voice, for people to say that it's okay to be a migrant, it's okay to start a business, and it's great to be a migrant entrepreneur. There are much more benefits to the country than to the person, creating jobs, paying taxes and all that. And I think when we get together, we have a much stronger voice. So that's what I want to do is get all the migrant entrepreneurs to have a strong voice and then celebrate what we're doing.